الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. الحمد لله غافر الذنب وقابل التوب شديد العقاب للقول لا إله إلا هو إليه المصير. اللهم لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك. لك الحمد يا من لم تتخذ ولدا ولم يكن لك شريك في الملك ولم يكن لك ولي من الذل والله أكبر كبيرا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله الأحد الفرد الصمد الذي لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. مالك الملك يؤتي الملك من يشاء وينزع الملك ممن يشاء يعز من يشاء ويذل من يشاء بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. سبح له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. له ملك السماوات والأرض يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير. هو الأول والآخر والظاهر والباطن وهو بكل شيء عليم. وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة وجاهد في الله حق جهاده حتى أتاه اليقين. تركنا على المحجة البيضاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك. شرح الله له صدره ووضع عنه وزره وأعلمه أن مع العسر يسرا وأمره أن إذا فرحت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب. عباد الله، أوصيكم ونفسي مقصرة بتقوى الله وأحذركم ونفسي من عصيانه ومخالفة أمره لزوما لقوله الحق تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. وكذلك في قول الحق تبارك وتعالى: يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. My brothers and sisters, my dearest children, indeed, the Imam Council of Canada sent a note to the Imams to address the issues of Bill C-9, which is a bill that we have talked a lot about in the past. But lately, there are two parties in Canada who've teamed up to create or to pass on a bill that if it is to be approved, then eventually it would infringe and impact our freedom, our religious freedoms as Canadians. And we are alarmed and concerned not only simply because this bill, if it is passed, then the religious tolerance we have by standing on the members or talking and explaining certain passages from the Quran, or when we are expressing our opinion as believers, that we could be easily penalized for it. And what's even more alarming is that there is no need for Attorney General involvement, meaning to say there is no need to go back to the court and find out whether the promoted religious ideas are considered to be hatred, crime or not. And this bill, if it is passed, then will be empowering the police services to charge an individual without getting back to the court. That doesn't sound like Canada to us. And that infringes our rights as Canadians. And the reason why we're protesting and we're trying to prevent this from happening by communicating with our officials of the government, those who have taken our voices for granted. We need to let them know that this alarming step is not appropriate, and it's going to not only hurt religious groups in Canada, but it's going to hurt our values as Canadians. After all, we know as Muslimin that Allah Azza said to us in the Quran, وَتِلْكَ الْقُرَىٰ أَهْلَكْنَاهُمْ لَمَّا ظَلَمُوا وَجَعَلْنَا لِمَهْلِكِهِمْ مَوْعِدًا. We know for sure that adl, justice, is a principle that Allah Azza wa Jal have applied into the creations of the livelihood of His own creation in this universe. يا عبادي إني حرمت الظلم على نفسي وجعلته بينكم محرما. O my servants, I have made injustice forbidden unto me. He's the just, He's al-adl, He's al-hakam. He's the one who represented the concept of hikmah and wisdom and justice. And those who will choose to do otherwise will be exposing themselves to be entitled to the punishment of the mighty Allah Azza wa Jalla. وَكَمْ أَهْلَكْنَا مِنَ الْقُرُونِ مِنْ بَعْدِ نُوحٍ وَكَفَى بِرَبِّكَ بِذُنُوبِ عِبَادِهِ خَبِيرًا بَصِيرًا. How many of nations who came after Nuh alayhi salam, that they violated the most important concept of living, which is justice, adl. And Allah Azza wa Jalla have taken these nations. وَفِرْعَوْنَ وَثَمُودَ, all those nations who have came in the past, who were full of their arrogance, who were full of their power, and they become so arrogant to the point that they have ignored the main principle that Allah Azza wa Jalla the Mighty have constituted for people to live by, which is adl. And there's an important concept I would like to share in my khutbah as well, coming from Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullahi alayhi, that the concept of adl does not necessarily associate with Islam. There, Allah Azza wa Jal could be giving the aid, or could be giving the chance of establishment for a certain nation who's not necessarily Muslim, but exercising the concept of adl. I need to be careful presenting this, not promoting that we should, ignore the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. But I'm talking about general principles of adl that the mighty Allah Azza wa Jal have applied in the livelihood of humans on earth, that He could be giving the support to the just, to the adl nation, though they might not be following the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, though they might be even doing atham as He indicated, because the concept of adl does not necessarily align with doing the atham, doing the ma'asi. And that concept also does not constitute with the concept of equality. So these are things that as Muslims we need to be aware of, so that we understand the concepts and the sunnah of Allah Azza wa Jal living in this part of the world. We are indeed those who will be the concept of adl is dear to our hearts as Muslims, not only, as I said again, because this will take away part of our freedom, religious freedom, but it also exposes the society which we belong to the punishment of the mighty Allah Azza wa Jalla. We need to explore this understanding and understand why we should be concerned as Canadians. That we go back to our officials and say to them, listen, concept of adl, justice is important. And it is important to be applied to all the faith background minorities living in Canada. And that's not a given right that someone can take it away from us. Because that's part of what makes us as Canadian, and that's part of what makes us as Muslims. Because we believe in adl despite of dealing with people of other faith background. Look into what is happening right now in the south of the border. We're seeing the very basic fundamental violations of the adl that will infringe the livelihood of the people living in this part of the world. It breaks the heart when you see how the minorities being targeted, not because they're doing wrong, but because of their ethnicity. They're targeted because of their faith background, the latest of which our brothers and sisters in the US from the Somali background has been on the hot spot and been targeted simply because they are black and they are Muslims. And they belong to a certain country which is known historically to be a country that have offered a lot historically to the people around it. It is alarming when we see the representative of that country speaking in public and say that I have a problem with Islam. This violates the very basic concept of freedom of speech in a country like the USA. This violates the principle, and if the American people, both Muslims and non-Muslims or other faith background, do not stand up and do something about it, then the Sunnah of Allah Azza wa Jalla are very clear. They're not going to discriminate between certain nation above other nation. Allah Azza wa Jalla's wisdom and hikmah and adl applies to people of all faith background, despite of what location on the earth they have been living in or what time of the history they will be living in. That has spoken that we need also to be more vigilant and aware about what's happening to our Muslim brothers and sisters in other parts of the world, and more specifically about Palestine. And forgive me for always talking about this issue, because I can't help it. I can't help it to see the hypocrisy of not the Western world and the double standard, but to see the hypocrisy and the cowardness of the Muslim Ummah leadership. Where are they from the continuous violation to the last agreement that was supposed to be bringing a sense of peace and tranquility to the people of Gaza? They continue to live under siege. They are not, their basic needs of food and medications are not yet met. They are constantly being bombarded. The latest of which yesterday they bombarded tents and killed 7 people, 5 of them from the same family. They continue to violate the rules, and they continue to kill civilians. They continue to make it difficult and next to impossible for them to be able to maintain their livelihood and stay on their land, because this is, after all, their end target goal, to evict them from their land and to replace it and erase the identity of that land as a Muslim land. As an ardun barakna fiha lil alameen, as a land, an extension of al-Masjid al-Aqsa. If these laws I'm talking about were to be passed, and what I said could be easily interpreted as a hatred speech, and I could be charged by the police and potentially be arrested and given a harsh sentence. These are the realities we're living in. We cannot put our hand in the sand and pretend there is nothing happening around us. There is continuous violation happening in the West Bank. Illegal taking of lands is happening daily. Hundreds, if not thousands, of people have been forced out of their own lands and their own homes. And settlers who are empowered by arm and by and protected by the Israeli army, continuously on a daily basis violate the privacy and the livelihood of people in the West Bank. Their aim is to prevent the possibility of establishment of a state for the Palestinians. Yes, alhamdulillah, we were so happy to see many cities across Canada taking the liberty of raising the Palestinian flag, and there were so many celebrations and many people dropped their tears, and they were so excited and happy to see finally a flag being raised for the Palestinians. But the cost of this flag to be raised was the thousands, the hundreds of thousands of lives that were lost during the past 2 years and 2 months almost now. And that unfortunately, that price that is paid by the shuhada who were buried under the rebels, by the mothers, by the fathers, by the children, is now also being hijacked and taken away from them. These are things that we need to be aware of and do something about it. Allah the Mighty will be asking us about our own exercising of adl in our life. Adl is not only just to be aware that Allah Azza wa Jalla is al-adl al-hakam, not only to be aware that I'm going to avoid doing something that is not appropriate with people around me. Well, what about the rest of the Muslim Ummah around you? What about the injustice that are being exercised on people around the globe? We are right now in need, in desperate need. Humanity now is in desperate need for a new ruling, a new system that prevents this mischief that is happening around us. Why would be a country like the US invading countries in South America? Are they concerned about the democracy? Are they concerned about the welfare of the people in Venezuela? That's nonsense. We all aware of it, what they're after. And we're all aware what they're trying to get out of it. And if we do not stand, and if we do not protest, and if we do not make our voice vocal and heard, that continuous violation will be happening. It could be them tomorrow, and then after tomorrow it would be us. We need to stand for justice, because regardless of how difficult justice and truth is, we need to stand for it and be able to defend it, because eventually we will be stripped from it and we will be paid the price for it, and our children are eventually the ones who will be suffering the most as they're living and growing in this society which we're living in. This is an important concept that I hope all of us will be taking actions for it. Alhamdulillah, we do have, as I mentioned many times in the past, we do have organizations that are, alhamdulillah, have taken the liberty and took it upon themselves to be defending our causes as a community. National Council of Canadian Muslims, the Justice for All, many of the organizations that we do have in our community are taking these issues seriously. They're the one who brought this issue to the attentions of the Imam, and we're on our responsibility to pass it on to the congregation. And we take it back to you so you're able to see how we could be of a help for them. Visit their websites, subscribe to their email lists, or be on their social media. Find out how we can do it. It doesn't need much of time and efforts from us to be able to do something, but that little thing we do will be going an extra mile and will be contributing with others' efforts and others' support financially to make it possible for them to be able to do what it needs, not only to protect the rights of the Muslim Canadians living in Canada, but to protect our rights as Canadians. We care about Canada more than anyone else, and no one can take that right away from us. We're not less Canadians than anyone else with different colors, skin color, or a color of eyes. We're as Canadians as everybody else, and we concern and care about the country we live in, and we want to ensure that our Canada stay the country that has justice and adl, and we will make sure that we will stand for that and do whatever it takes to protect it. That's what we want to send back to our politicians and let them know clearly that we're not partitions. Our loyalty is not to a certain party. Our loyalty is to haq and to justice, and we'll follow that principle no matter what party represented. So let that be clear to them that don't take our vote for granted. Do not take us for granted because we're people of principle and moral values. وأقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه فيغفر لكم. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور انفسنا وسيئات اعمالنا. من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. ان الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا ايها الذين امنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما صليت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم وبارك اللهم على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما باركت على ابراهيم في العالمين انك حميد مجيد. اللهم ان عبيدك ابناء عبيدك ابناء امائك نواصينا يا رب بيدك ماض يا رب فينا حكمك عدل فينا قضاؤك. نسالك اللهم بكل اسم هو لك سميت به نفسك انزلت في كتابك او علمته احدا من خلقك او استاثرت به في علم الغيب عندك بان تجعل القران العظيم ربيع قلوبنا يا الله. اللهم اجعله جلاء لهمومنا واحزاننا يا ارحم الراحمين. اللهم ندعوك في هذا البيت من بيوتك وندعوك في هذه الساعه المباركه بان تفرج هم وغم مكروبين في مشارق الارض ومغاربها يا رب العالمين. اللهم فرج هم المغمومين، اللهم اقض الدين عن المدينين، اللهم فك اسر المحسوبين. اللهم نسالك برحمتك بان تلطف باهلنا في فلسطين، اللهم الطف بهم في السودان، اللهم الطف بهم في اليمن، اللهم الطف بهم في كشمير وفي مشارق الارض ومغاربها فانك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم اجعلنا ممن يقفون مع الحق، اللهم اجعلنا من اهل الحق. اللهم نسالك بان توفقنا لما تحب وترضى فانك على كل شيء قدير. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه اجمعين واقم الصلاه.